Dr. Macuth, what are best practices for social studies?
So in the social studies, I always talk to my students about the importance of doing social studies. I think there's this notion that social studies is something that happens in a classroom through a textbook or through a lecture or a worksheet. And one of the things I try to have conversations with teachers about in social studies is that social studies is so much more than what happened in a textbook. That social studies is all around us. It's in communities, it's in houses, it's in lives, it's in the workplace. So in regards to best practices in social studies, I talk to my students about using the assets of their community, using the community as a learning laboratory in order to bring the material to life. So trying to get them to experience and think about different perspectives that they haven't been exposed to. Maybe that is a pen pal activity with students in another country using something like ePals, or using Skype in the classroom, taking it global, Iron, any of these resources that connect teachers, social studies teachers, to global audiences. So social studies isn't a course that students take. Social studies is that something we do, right? Do history, students do geography, they do economics, something that happens in their everyday life.
Could you give us an update on what social studies teachers need to know about the standards?
And in this era of No Child Left Behind and accountability, there are a host of standards that teachers grapple with every single day. And obviously we have the National Council for the Social Studies. They've put together 10 themes in the social studies that teachers should be aware of. And these are interdisciplinary themes. The social studies by its nature is very interdisciplinary. And we think about ways in which teachers and students can draw from history, from geography and economics and psychology and sociology and anthropology to better understand some of the most critical issues our world faces.
And how are these new academic standards for social studies in Ohio, how are they connected to the Common Core state standards?
So right now, actually, it's going to be in about 2 weeks. I've got a meeting in Seattle, Washington, and the National Council for the Social Studies, they're going to present to the national media the new Common Core standards in social studies. And up until this point, we've only seen Common Core standards in math and also in English language arts. And it's been real difficult being a social studies teacher and social studies educator, because you see this huge investment in English language arts and in math. And because social studies isn't its own Common Core area, you've seen the marginalization of the social studies. And what's interesting is that we're going to see in just a matter of weeks the presentation of Common Core standards in social studies. There are a lot of opportunities in social studies to align our lessons to standards even outside of the social studies. So trying to foster those interdisciplinary connections.
How do you think that social studies teachers can best reach a variety of learners in their classroom?
Yeah, this is the real challenge. I think this is a real challenge even as a teacher, knowing that you have students from so many different backgrounds, so many different levels of background knowledge and interests and intelligences, and thinking about ways as a social studies teacher you can devise an activity or a lesson that's meaningful for students, right? And I think one way in which we can do that is sort of just real world, everyday economics, everyday civics. For right now, we're sort of in the midst of this presidential election here in the state of Ohio. And what an amazing time to be teaching social studies in the state of Ohio, a critical state in the national discourse in regards to politics. So one of the things that I try to get teachers to do in social studies, and even college students that want to teach social studies, is think about the ways in which they can use what's happening in our world as a hook, as an anticipatory set, in order to get students engaged in the social studies. So not only are you providing something very concrete for students in regards to topics that you're trying to teach them, but you're doing that in a variety of different ways. And in social studies, we can use simulations, right? We can actually have students participate in simulations where they get to experience and think through different historical perspectives. We can have students debate some of the most challenging issues facing our country and facing our planet. There are so many different perspectives, right? And we can bring in controversial issues into the classroom and get students to have these conversations, because these are conversations that citizens are having, that politicians are having, and thinking about that next wave of citizens. So thinking about the different ways in which we can design instructional strategies and employ different instructional strategies to bring the content to life so that we can meet a variety of different learners. And I also am a huge supporter. I just edited a book in regards to ways in which teachers can use technology to teach about and with the world. And what's really fascinating right now is the ways in which technology can be used to bring the material to life for students. We coin it digitally relevant pedagogy. Just because you add a cell phone, or just because you add a video camera, or you add the internet, that you can bring that student who traditionally isn't excited about the social studies into the social studies. You can bring them, you can bring them in on their terms using the technologies that they're so familiar with. And those are really exciting things that I think we can do in social studies in order to meet the needs of different learners.
I think that directly impacts on what kinds of citizens we have, and if they really have strong citizenship values, right? I mean, they have to be informed citizens, right? I know that you read the SIOP book that focuses on history, right? And so I just wanted to know, in terms of the social studies and educating English language learners, what do you think about the SIOP model?
It's a phenomenal model, and I think it's good teaching. I think that's what the SIOP model tells us in social studies, is that we need to be careful with the words that we use, with the examples that we need to use. We need to be more deliberate in our teaching. And in doing that, we can do a better job of meeting the needs of students. So what's interesting for me is I go into social studies classrooms all the time. And what I end up seeing is a lot of lecture, and I end up seeing a lot of textbooks. I see a lot of worksheets. And somewhere in all of this, we forgot the social in social studies. I think one of the things that the SIOP model does is it talks about the importance of students communicating with one another, using language, applying language, better understanding language, and teachers not taking for granted the cultural capital that students do have. So instead of teachers thinking as if students think about what students don't have, thinking about what they do have and how we can use that in the classroom, especially in regards to content vocabulary. So as a former high school economics teacher, I always talk about different economics. What is economics? The different types of economies, the market economy, traditional economy, command economy. And knowing that there are really important content words that we use in social studies, being aware of how we can bring these words to life for students with a lot of different experiences and levels of background knowledge. And not only the content words, right, but also the pedagogical language that we use, the professional teacher jargon that we use every single day, and trying to ensure that a line of clarity, that students know what it means to identify, that students understand what the difference is between analysis and synthesis, that we communicate to students not only the content, which in an era of No Child Left Behind and standardized tests, we get that that's important, but also at the same time having a better understanding of, a lot of times there are students in our classroom that's sitting there that have no idea what's happening. And there's just a lot of, the teacher might as well be speaking a foreign language or a second language, because in some aspects they really are speaking a second language for the student. So being more cognizant of the words that we use and doing a better job of teaching important pedagogical content vocabulary.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.